let's now quickly revisit some of the layouts for the two activities that we are using in this application. First, the contacts activity uses a simple list view to display the list of contacts, and this is enclosed inside a relative layout, and I'm also using a toolbar here, which I'm going to come to in a short while. The other layout that we are using is for the chat client activity. In here, you see the use of the edit text just as we did before, and you see the use of an image button here rather than the text button or the standard button that we saw earlier. So I have replaced the send button with an image button here. So to do that, we can use an image button from the palette, drag it in, and then for the image button, you're going to supply the image resource that we included in the drawable folder as one of the parameters. So if you select that image button, you would see that the for this button, the source src here is set to be the drawable, which is the back button that we have included in the drawables folder. For the image button, I am making use of an Android standard background drawable that is available with Android Lollipop. And further, at the top of the screen, you can include a toolbar where you typically put additional menu buttons and menu overflow, and also the title of the activity or the application, and perhaps even a back navigation button there. Now, in order to maintain backward compatibility for the earlier versions of Android, if you had any previous experience with Android, you would have seen something called the action bar being used earlier. Now, with Lollipop onwards, the compatibility library supports toolbar. A toolbar is a generalization of the action bar that has been used earlier. So how do we make use of a toolbar within an Android application, and then how do you include that within your application? One way of doing so is to define another resource in the layout folder called as the toolbar.xml file. Now, this is the design view of the toolbar. Let me take you to the text view of the toolbar and show what it actually contains. This text view shows that this includes the toolbar being defined as support v7 widget toolbar, and then I provide certain properties for this toolbar. Now, once I create this toolbar layout file, I can then include this toolbar into any other layout file by using include statement. So if you go to the chat client.xml file, at the top you see the toolbar appearing there. Now, if you switch to the text view, you will see at the top that I have included the toolbar into my layout by using the include feature available for designing layouts. So here I am making use of the toolbar.xml file, and using that XML file, I'm including that in place inside my activity client. So that is how I can create a toolbar and include it into my other UI layouts for the various activities. Stylizing the toolbar can be done using the styles.xml file that we have defined earlier. When we review material design later, we will understand how this is done in practice. One other feature of the Lollipop platform and the material design approach that I am using in this application is the recycler view. So earlier we were using the list view for displaying the list of messages. I have now replaced that list view with a recycler view. The recycler view is a slightly modified or an enhanced version of list view, which provides additional features. Now in this application, I am only using the recycler view for its listing of items purpose. But the recycler view brings a lot more other flexibility. Now let me show you how I include the recycler view within my user interface. Now earlier, if I switch to the text view of the UI, you will see that earlier I had the list view included here. I have replaced that with Android Support V7 widget recycler view here and configured certain parameters for that. Now this is how you would include a recycler view within your application. Now the recycler view still doesn't appear in the palette on the left side yet. So once we have done that, now we need to go into the code and then activate all these different features. First the toolbar and then the recycler view. So let's, in the next part of this exercise, we will revisit some of those code files that I have already included in the project, and look up which parts we need to fill in order to complete this application. Finally, visiting the Java code, we will see that we already have 4 different Java files that are included in this application. First and foremost, let's visit contacts.java. This is the standard list view that I've used earlier for my Greet Friend application. I have basically copied and pasted much of the code and then just edited a little bit to make it feasible for me to use the contacts activity within this application. In addition, I have made the contacts activity as the starting activity for my application. Now you're going to ask me, how did you manage to configure the contacts activity as the starting activity, while earlier the chat client activity was the starting activity? To do that, when we create the contacts activity, we can set that to be the launcher activity in Android. Now what Android Studio will do is that it'll put this information into the manifest file. So let's just quickly visit the manifest file to learn how you configure a launching activity for your application. So if you switch to the manifest file here, you will notice that in the manifest file, the activity named contacts now has something called an intent filter specified here. This intent filter has 2 actions, action and a category included inside this filter. Now the intent filter is essentially informing the Android framework, saying that if this application is to be launched by the user, then use this activity, in this case the contacts activity, as the starting activity when you start the application. Now this is what we are specifying using the action and the category parts of my intent filter. So you see that in the action part, I have specified it as action intent action main and the category as action intent category launcher. So this is how the Android framework understands that if a user clicks on the icon of this particular application, then you are supposed to start this as the starting activity when you start the application. Now again, there is more to intent filter than what I have just explained to you, but that is something that you can review on the developers website in more detail. So I wanted to introduce you to certain nuances that you see in the manifest file. Now normally you would want Android Studio to automatically configure all this for you, so you don't need to go in and edit these parts in by hand as far as possible. Now the contacts.java, you can quickly visit the code and then notice that this is very much similar to what we have seen earlier, except that the contacts activity will now start the chat client activity using the intent and the start activity. So we have already seen how to start activities earlier. The next aspect or the next file that we will visit is the myadapter.java file. This myadapter.java file contains my own custom adapter that I have implemented for use with the recycler view. In the earlier exercise, we have seen the use of custom adapter for the list view. So this custom adapter that I'm creating here is of the recycler view type. So that's why I'm extending the recycler view adapter here to create my adapter. Now, when you create a recycler view adapter, there are certain methods that we have to implement. Also note that in this case, I have two different layouts that I need to use depending on which kind of message I am displaying on the screen, whether the message is an incoming message or the message is an outgoing message from me. So for that, we have two types of view holders being created, view holder type 1 and type 2. Type 1 refers to the use of the view holder to display an outgoing message. Type 2 is used for creating a view holder that displays an incoming message in this example. So the incoming message uses message.xml as the layout. The outgoing message uses my message.xml as the layout. So in here, if you visit the code, you will notice that I am creating the two different views by making use of the layout files, and also appropriately setting the text views inside the linear layout in each of these. Now, for the recycler view, this onCreateView holder is going to be invoked by something called the recycler view's layout manager. I will see how we make use of the layout manager in code in a short while. So whenever the recycler view needs to display a new item or add a new item into the list of items, it's going to result in a call to the onCreateView holder. This is the one that creates the view for that item to be included in the list. Now, for the list view, we saw the use of getView for this same purpose. Okay. In addition, we have some other methods that I have implemented here to enable us to create the recycler views. Finally, we drop into chatline.java, and in chatline.java, much of the code is the same as what we have seen earlier for the previous exercise, but let me draw the attention to the two parts that we are going to fill in as part of this exercise. First and foremost, we included the toolbar in our UI's view. We want to activate the toolbar and make the toolbar act like an action bar for our activity. So to do that, we need to include a certain amount of code here, and we're going to replace this comment by the appropriate code just to enable that purpose. What I have just done is to substitute that to-do comment with the appropriate code to activate the toolbar. Let me quickly run you through this code step by step to understand what I am doing at this moment. So here I am getting a reference to the toolbar. Then I am setting this toolbar to be an action bar, which means that this toolbar is displayed at the top of the screen, and it can also host menu items and so on for this particular application. So this is the second part that we need to do. Now, I am going to set my friend's name as the title for this toolbar. So to do that, from the intent, I am getting hold of my friend's name. So in contacts.java file, when the intent is created, I'm adding in the friend's name as an extra field for that intent, and then I'm saying it over here. So I'm retrieving the friend's name here, and then I'm going to then make use of that friend's name and then set it as the title for my toolbar. So this is the set of steps that you need to do to activate the toolbar. If you go to the contacts.java file, you will see me again doing similar kind of thing there also to activate the toolbar on the contacts view. The final step in this exercise is to include the code for using the recycler view, or to activate the recycler view in our code. So here you see that I have substituted the comment with the appropriate code to use the recycler. So I am getting a reference to the recycler view here, and then I'm specifying that this recycler view has a fixed size, so there is only a finite number of messages that need to be displayed. The recycler view will automatically take care of scrolling when required and then only display those parts of the message there. Now, a recycler view makes use of something called the layout manager. Now, in this case, since I am using a list of items displayed vertically, so that's why I am making use of the linear layout manager here for this purpose. So I get a reference to the linear layout manager and then set the orientation of this linear layout manager to be vertical. So as you see, the recycler view allows you to include things like linear layouts, grid layouts, and card layouts, and so on. So the recycler view is a more general type than the standard list view we have seen earlier. And then after this, you're going to set the linear layout manager to be the layout manager for the message list recycler view. And then also we are supplying the adapter for this message list recycler view here. So once we have completed this part of the code, let's save that and then start and execute this application to see the result after we have completed these modifications. Once your application is deployed to the emulator or to the device, in case you're using a real device, then you will see that the contacts show up on the screen as seen to the right side here. Now, if you click on any one of those contacts, now before we proceed, let's see how I use the two colors here for my toolbar and also the status bar up here. Now, and also this is a standard list view that we have seen earlier. So let's go ahead and click on one of those items. So now we switch to the chat client activity. And in the chat client activity, notice that the title is set to the name of my friend. I have already shown you in code how we can achieve that. So now if you go ahead and type in your messages and then click on the send button, you can see the chat client working in practice. And so on. So that completes the chat client with colors exercise.